Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this regional preview edition of Inside the Zone. We're at regionals this Friday. Only 6 local teams.
Six remain
alive and kicking. Of these teams, which has impressed you the most thus far?
Woo! Belmont. I think that's pretty easy after what we saw them do Friday night. Very shocking, not that they won, but maybe just the manner that they won. I mean, they just dominated that game for 4 quarters. I mean, 21-7 was the final, but I think the score is not indicative of just how much they dominated that game for 4 quarters against Bishop Luers. Just a phenomenal effort by Belmont.
In saying that, do you think they're the team that has the best chance of making it to the state championship game from our area? Or do you still stick with, maybe Dwenger or Snider?
I'm sticking with Snider. They get Mishawaka at home. Then they maybe play Kokomo or Westfield. And Kokomo, I'm just not afraid of Kokomo. I don't care if they're 11-0, 12-0, whatever they are. I'm just not afraid of them if I'm Snider. I mean,
yeah, Snider's had a good history against them.
Yes, and Kokomo has just played a very weak schedule comparison to Snider. I'm sure they're a very good team, probably the best that Kokomo's ever had, but I still don't think they're on the par of Snider.
They ran the football pretty well against Huntington North last week. You take that with a grain of salt. Let's start off with this Snider game because they've got Mishawaka this week. It's at Spooler Stadium. What do you know about this Mishawaka team, and what are going to be some of the biggest keys on Friday for Snider to have the success that they've had?
Well, what we've seen out of Mishawaka the last couple of years, they played Northside, and we've seen them in the playoffs every so often, is that they're just a monotonous, physical, punch in the face, and we're going to dominate you with the line of scrimmage type of team, and that's what they're going to try to do against Snider, grind out yards, control that clock, move the ball on the ground, and just keep that ball away from the Snider offense. Now, it sounds like a good plan, but to execute it against a Snider team that has looked phenomenal for the majority of the season is a different story.
We talk about the SAC being tough, but really this year there weren't a lot of teams in the SAC that necessarily ran the ball first or ran the ball predominantly. There are a lot of good quarterbacks in the SAC this year, so you throw the football. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But when you take a look at fullback Peyton Marshall for Mishawaka, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. Quarterback Darian Phillips, 100 yards on 25 carries. They ran for 324 yards, 0 passing yards. So Snider hasn't faced a lot of really run-heavy teams like this. Does that concern you at all if you're Kurt Tittman or if you're the Snider Panther defensive unit?
Well, yeah, I think that's their focus. That front 7 needs to play well for Snider. But you look at it and man, to beat a team like Snider, I just don't know if you can beat them by being one-dimensional like Mishawaka has been. What they do is very good, but if they cannot run the ball as effective as they usually like to, can they beat a team vertically? We talk about a lot of teams, kind of like Adams Central. At some point, they're going to have to pass. Mishawaka, I look at it, they're going to have to pass and execute some passing plays on Friday. Can they do it? That's the big question.
And when I talk about rushing attacks, like we thought Snider would be a huge rushing team this year. We knew they were going to air it out a little bit. They went more to the air during the regular season, but in the postseason, it seems like Money Woods, Dominic Scott, those guys are going for 80, 90, 100-plus yards each game.
Yeah, and I think after that Dwenger game, it just became a refocus for Snider. Look, we have good playmakers, but if we're going to make a state championship run, we need to be able to run the football. And you have a 2-headed monster with Money Woods and Dominic Scott, but they just needed to challenge that offensive front that's been so good most of the year. But I think that Dwenger game was a gut check, and I think they needed to get back to basics and dominating at the line of scrimmage and getting off the blocks and just really focusing in on winning those battles up front, which they were not able to do against Bishop Dwenger. And I think they've refocused and recentered on those things, and so far so good. They're really moving the ball on the ground.
Yeah, if you're Isaac Stiebling in that passing game, is this a game where you don't necessarily have to shine? You just can't make big mistakes?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think because with what Mishawaka is going to want to do is keep the ball away from Snider with the offense that they have. They could be able to limit those possessions. So when Snider does have the ball, they need to capitalize and score.
And I think if we see this game come down to special teams, which I think Snider will take care of business, Snider's special teams pretty darn good. The kicking game has been good.
Don't kick to Mac Hippenhammer.
And Mac Hippenhammer, 5 catches last week, 155 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but he's dangerous pretty much anywhere on the field. He's like Austin Mack Jr. in a certain way.
Yeah, and we've talked all year, why did teams continue to kick to Austin Mack? And Belmont stopped doing it, and they were smart. One of the many smart things that Belmont did Friday was they did not kick to Austin Mack. Why are teams still kicking to Mac Hippenhammer? It makes no sense.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. You think Snider will win that one pretty easily?
Snider wins, yes. And
easily?
I don't think easily. I think, maybe 12, 13 points. I guess maybe that is easily. But, yeah, I think, they pull away late. But I think it's it's a close game for a half.
They seem to just wear on teams. There'll be games that are close that Snider's had in the second quarter, maybe mid-third quarter. They use the depth and everything like that
And
to
being
really
at home,
grind a team out.
Yeah, being at home, not having to get on that bus trip. And I think that's kind of what maybe affected Snider a little bit on that slow start last week at Concord. Concord's a good team, but that was the first time that Snider had to get on the bus and go for a long bus ride and get off the bus and unfamiliar territory and stretch and all that stuff. And, that can be different. I mean, when you're kind of in a situation that you hadn't been on all year, it can be kind of tough to adjust.
And you go to Concord and you're on all of the Sean Kemp aura around everything in the Concord area.